everyone. Thank you for listening to Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips, your podcast channel for effective communication skills. And I'm your host, Sarika Singh. On this podcast, I talk to you about becoming an effective communicator, be it in branding communications, how to pitch to clients, creative writing skills, how to speak, when to speak, tips to avoid and handle those goof-ups, how to break the ice and start conversations, and everything else that walks through my mind. This episode begins. Hey everyone, do you think some people were born stars? That the crowds always lit up for them when they walked on the stage? The huge cheering, the huge fan following that they have today always existed? The answer is no. Today, the king of Bollywood, or rather the Badshah of Bollywood, Shah Rukh Khan, he walks on the stage. And even if his name is mentioned on the stage lights up. People start screaming, I too, dying to catch a glimpse of the star that he is, dying to hear him just say one word, dying for him to open his arms. All that has not happened by chance. Of course, the stars favored him, but to become the star that he is, he's created a lot of star moments. Star moments? What are those? Don't worry, we'll come to that and we'll also learn how to create some of those magical star moments. While we're not here to talk about superstars and Bollywood stars and Hollywood stars, why? Because I'm absolutely no authority on that subject. But when it comes to creating and building star moments in public speaking, when in conversation with someone, especially a large audience, there I can certainly contribute and I can help you out. This episode of this Communication Skills podcast is dedicated to building such star moments. Moments which will make you a star, moments by which you will ensure that your audience continues to talk about what you spoke weeks later, months later, even years later after you've spoken. There was so much to share that I had to segment this episode into two parts. While there are a lot of fun tricks in this episode, those who follow me know that I love to serve desserts only after serving a wholesome main course. So while you enjoy the appetizers and the main course this week, I promise to serve you with a super magical, super effective trick as the dessert to plant something they'll always remember. Your star moment. That's right. In the minds of those listening to you. And that will come next week, that is next Friday, in the part number 2 of this episode series. So don't forget to stay tuned all the way. Without further delay, let's make you the star that you truly deserve to be. Let's roll. Every era, every generation comes with its own jargons, its own lingo. The LOLs, the FOMOs and the TTLYs, they're probably everyday language for the kids today, for the youth. But they're alien for the older generations. Having said that, whatever language we use, end of the day, don't we all want to weave a memorable moment? Some catchy story in our talk? Something that sticks with people like a catchy phrase or maybe a powerful image. It could even be an inspiring anecdote. But we all want that something which sticks with people. We all want that secret sauce that makes your words linger in their thoughts long after our speech is over. Think of it as leaving a lasting impression. So when someone reflects on your talk, that special something stands out vividly, making your message unforgettable. It's all about crafting those star moments that echo in their minds for long afterwards. STAR, something they'll always remember. In public speaking, star is like creating a mental bookmark in the minds of your audience. And we all try to do that. Lots of stars in creative and business fields, and especially those lovely TED Talks that we all love, use this smart trick of the star method to make their event, their performance so dramatic that the audience talks about it weeks, months, years later after they've done the performance or the event. Harvard School dropout and Microsoft founder, I know you've guessed him, Bill Gates. He demonstrated this technique practically in his 2009 TED Talk. It was so powerful that I'm forced to start my first example today with what he did. So Bill Gates, he was trying to make the case for increasing investment to eradicate malaria and to emphasize the fact that malaria was deadly. It was a serious problem, and especially for the poor people. What he did, believe you me, shocked the entire audience. The drama was so precisely timed that it not only shocked the audience then, but imagine that was 2009, this is 2024, and I'm giving you the example today. It gave everyone a story to take home. So what Bill Gates did was that he opened a jar full of mosquitoes and flung it open into the audience. The audience was shocked. In his justification, Gates said, "There's no reason only poor people should have the experience." And he proved his point. He got the investment he needed, and he put this point across precisely enough. People still talk about what he did, why he did, and what had to be done. His communication penetrated through the minds of millions just because of that one star moment that he created. All the stars love to create the star moments, and that's their magic. That's why the charisma, that's why we love them, among other things. Steve Jobs, the Apple guy, he was famously notorious for his theatrical performances every time he would release an Apple product. Because every time this tech master would create a star moment, something they'll always remember. Jobs was a master at creating these star moments. And this he created with absolute finesse because of the long hours of repeated rehearsals, hours that he invested to practice his presentation to unveil the Apple product in intriguing ways. It called for tons and tons of work. It didn't happen by default, but Jobs was an expert at that. He always made sure he had the elements of surprise and twists and a top-notch final act. He was such a smart salesman that he never ever tried to sell technology. He always sold the experience. He would humanize technology like nobody else. In 2001, when Apple announced the launch of the first ever iPod, people were eagerly waiting for the star moment by Steve Jobs. And did he disappoint them? Of course not. So in 2001, what Jobs did was, he didn't explain the iPod disk size, whether it was 5 GB or 10 GB. He explained exactly what the customer wanted to know. So what Steve did was, I can call him Steve's, okay. What Jobs did was, he pulled out an iPod from his pocket. So it was a tiny, teeny little thing that was holding 1,000 songs. So basically, he communicated that in tiny little thing, you can hold 1,000 songs in your tiny pocket. To explain the size of the iPod, he showed a deck of cards. So holding an iPod in your pocket was as easy as holding a deck of cards. Again, in your pocket. Jobs' drama worked. People welcomed the iPod with open arms. But in 2005, he didn't stop 4 years later when he gave the iPod Nano to the world. He was getting better and better. His presentation answered a question which I personally had in my mind. In fact, many of you might be guessing. Have you wondered, like me, what's that small little pocket in inside the jeans? The front pocket, it also has a tiny little pocket. Sometimes you just end up putting a coin in there. I've always thought it's a waste of cloth. It's just style which doesn't make any sense. But Steve Jobs gave a new answer to that particular pocket. So Jobs wore a jeans to a formal product launch presentation. And this was purely intentional. He pulled out an iPod Nano from that tiny little pocket in the jeans. At that moment, the audience kind of got the idea of how it feels like holding an iPod Nano in their tiny jeans, that extra pocket. I wasn't there, but I'm sure many people would have looked at their tiny pocket in the jeans to imagine what that experience would be. So like I said, he would sell the experience, never the product. Jobs was getting a real kick out of his star moments. In 2008, when he launched the MacBook Air, what he did was a usual star moment. It was so human, so relatable, and yet so magical. He walked to the side of the stage, picked up an envelope, the typical ones you see floating around in offices like workplaces. So Jobs picked up one such envelope. And from inside that, he pulled out a MacBook Air. He conveyed, it's super thin, it's super light, it's super handy. Can just go in an envelope. This is the MacBook Air, he announced. The audience went wild, cameras clicking, flashing everywhere. The auditorium was pregnant with excitement. While Jobs pulled off his truly magical theatrical performance, he said, you can get a feel of how thin this is. It has a full-size keyboard, full-size display, the world's thinnest notebook. Did it do well? Did MacBook Air do well? Is it a success story? Your guess is good as mine. In 2023 alone, Apple Mac shipped 6.3 million units worldwide. And Apple generated over 40 billion US dollars in revenue from sales of Mac products alone. Of course, Steve Jobs did not stop at the MacBook Air and the iPod. But if I tell you about the star moment during the iPhone launch, many of you are going to Google it. Or should I say, go on the internet to look it up right after this podcast. I can totally feel it because I would have done the same. Such was the star performance of the Apple star because he always gave his audiences star moments, something they'll always remember. Something we are talking about in this podcast long after the events actually happened, and long after Apple continues to rock, and long after Steve Jobs is gone. Do you think star moments are the prerogative of only stars? Of course not. Each one of us is entitled to many such star moments. We just need to know what they are and how to create them. And I'm going to help you with this right here, right now. So typically, there are 5 major types of star moments. Have you noticed that many times public speakers carry a prop or a demo or something dramatic, like they would do an reenactment of something, or they'll do a mimicry on the stage? Their small little dramatizations create a deep impression in the minds of audiences. And they convey insights or whatever message they want to easily. By doing this, what they're actually doing is they're planting a star moment in your head. Scientists call this memorable dramatization. When Steve Jobs propped the theatrical performance with a jar of mosquitoes, he pulled off a, memorable dramatization. Dramatization which was memorable. Public speakers often use physical objects to create intrigue, evoke humor, and most importantly, hammer home their point. So when you're giving a presentation or you're giving a talk, ask yourself, What else can I bring to supplement, to add value to my presentation, to speak beyond speaking from a screen? You'll get your answer to create your magical star moment. How many of us remember "Yes, we can" from the political campaign of Barack Obama? Of course, he used the rule of 3, using just 3 words in the campaign. But this repetitive soundbite, it created magic and created the impact which was meant to be created. I'm talking about the second star moment creator, the repetitive, repeatable sound bites. The words of Martin Luther King, "I have a dream," they're still fresh in our ears. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong said this in 1969. Everyone knows it at the back of their palm. Why? Because these were magical star moments. So when you're giving a presentation or a talk or any public speaking engagement, and you want to ensure that your message lands, to do this, create your star moment, and the trick is choose a key phrase. Make it a theme. Let it run through your presentation and keep coming back to it again and again and again. It'll help to keep your presentation clear, your focus sharp. Make sure those phrases are short, powerful, catchy, and easy to remember. And they should be easily repeatable. Plant your star moment in your audience's mind and give them something they'll always remember. In India, in Hindi, we have a saying which goes, "Jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai," meaning, whatever is visible, nicely, looks good, it sells well. In English too, there's a saying very close to this, well, not exactly, but it goes like, "A picture really is worth 1,000 words." In today's context about the star moments, I would say a picture is really worth 1,000 emotions. People connect with what they see. So show it to them. Create an evocative visual. Maybe a stalking statistic. Maybe a compelling picture. Maybe a word written in a huge font. People find it really hard to recall lines of the text, but powerful visuals always stay with them. I remember once I was giving a presentation and I intentionally made it in black and white. And suddenly, moving from those black and white slides, I had this one slide with a sudden striking bright color photograph. It stood out. I wanted it to stand out. They got my point. Mission accomplished. So your objective is to make it unforgettable for them. So this can be a fantastic trick to plant a star moment in the minds of your audience, something they'll always remember. I love to serve the dessert at the end, so don't forget the final magical trick to create your star moment is coming up next week, next Friday, in part number 2 of this episode series. Keep working on creating star moments and becoming the star that you truly are. I keep sharing tips and tricks on my Insta handle, which is communication_coaching. So while it's entertaining, it has a lot of learning, a lot of takeaway. So do subscribe if you want some infotainment to better your communication skills. Thank you for listening to this episode of Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips with Sarika Singh. If you want to be notified of upcoming episodes, be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow the podcast. I'll be back to share more stories, more life experiences, and more communication tips every Friday. If you want to reach me or connect with me, just put your comments in the comment box below or mail me at info@sarikasingh.in. I know you're going to rate and review this podcast, so a big thank you in advance. Stay tuned and think about what we talked today.